Before covering the Gunmakers Fair this year, I want to give a shout out to the event's history. For over 30 some years, the last weekend in July, the Gunmakers Fair was held on the ground outside of Dixon's muzzleloading shop, and the Dixon family started by Chuck Dixon, ran this show for years. And a lot of great memories were here. A lot of people, including myself, it's the event that got them interested in the muzzleloader community. And the family has done a lot for the community as itself. So if you're in the Kempton, Lehigh Valley area, be sure to swing into Dixon's muzzleloading shop. And give them your business, and also thank them for hosting the show for all those years. I do have, and it'll be in the cards at the end, a couple videos of the show when it was held at their property. And they're a great bunch of people, and make sure you give them their business. So now on to this year's show.
Good morning. I'm Joe DiGirlando, and I am one of the founders, original signers of the Jacobsburg Historical Society. We are 50 years old this year, and we have been involved in trying to preserve history for our young people and educate them about what the period of colonization of America was really all about and what our forefathers did to work in the area. We have the Henry family connection, the Henry Gunmakers that originally started in Lancaster, moved to Nazareth area and set up gun factories and produced thousands of guns for the fur trade industry. They worked very closely with John Jacob Astor and the fur company that made him the first multi-millionaire in the United States. And we have been trying to get people interested in learning about the real history of America. The Henry family had great connections in the French and Indian War, the American Revolution. They were involved directly with George Washington, Ben Franklin, a lot of the colonists, the signers of the Declaration of Independence. They had a gun shop and store in Philadelphia during the Revolution, and they were very committed to the people that worked for them. They created an opportunity for people to have a good livelihood. The family became very wealthy, but the workers that worked for them were also taken care of. The Henry family built a school for them. They built a church and worked very hard to keep the people in their area working well and living well. What questions would you like to ask?
I'm now with the show at Dixon's. I know the Jacobsburg Historical Society is one of the groups that helped get this back going, or the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton after the Dixon family retired. What involvement did this group have in getting this event going?
Well, there were 4 organizations that took up the task to get this going, and thanks to Dave Ehrig and the National Muzzleloaders Association getting it started, we actually took a 25% interest in helping to fund it and get the program going, and it looks like it's going to be a great success. People have come from all over to be here, and we are committed to doing this for 2 more years. And Kempton Fairgrounds, ideal location. We see the parking's good, the food seems to be good for the people, a lot of good opportunities, and the crowds, I understand, yesterday and the day before were really fantastic. The only problem we've run into is something that we have no control over, and that's the detour to get here, but it wasn't that bad.
No. Well, thanks for all you guys did for the fair. Of what I've been hearing, they've had around 2,000 people come through, so I mean, that's a good crowd, and I appreciate the interview.
Well, thank you very much for having us and for being a part of this, and we're hoping that this grows. It looks like we have more space that we could expand this and get more people to come out and learn all about the history of our country. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. Good.
Hey, my name is Chris Polizzi. I'm the current guild master for the Honorable Company of Horners. We're an educational nonprofit that likes to share the education, the study, the research, and actually how to work with horn from historical to current modern days. So we were asked by Jeff Cunningham of the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association to figure out a way to keep the Gunmakers Fair alive. And of course, we were really excited to try and do that. The accoutrements judging especially has always been deep in the heart of a lot of horn workers, so we worked with him, also the Jacobsburg Historical Society and the Pennsylvania Federation of Black Powder Shooters to come together, figure out a plan how we can make this happen. It was a little too soon for us to do it in 2021, but we got the plans laid. We got the Kempton Fairgrounds reserved for 3 years, so we can work on it for the next 3 years. This year has turned out amazing. We're very happy with the turnout of the public that's coming out, the vendors that were able to come. We have so much room to expand, so it is really exciting. Lots of the organizations here have tents for you to come and visit. The Honorable Company of Horners has one. We have lots of display items and educational resources for you to look at. We also have the spring pole lathe for you to actually see how people would have been turning horn back in early days. And so we're super excited. We'd love for you to check us out. If you go to our website, it's hornguild.org. There's lots of links there, and if there's any questions that you have, we will definitely get back to you. So if you have any questions, let us know. Thanks.
I'm ready.
Okay, so my name is Jeff Warner. I'm the president of the Pennsylvania Federation of Black Powder Shooters. Our sole existence is to hold the state championship every year. That's the last full weekend of August. This year it will be held at the Altoona Rifle and Pistol Club in Blair County, Pennsylvania. Aside from just holding the state shoot, we publish a shoot book every year that lists shoot dates and locations of 30 of our charter clubs that are all over the state, north, south, east, and west. Membership for that to get the book is $15. That also covers your entry fee to get into the state shoot, and you also get a quarterly newsletter. We also have, we can find us on Facebook. Look up Pennsylvania Federation of Black Powder Shooters Incorporated. And we also have a website. We're also, we have a large pool of knowledge as far as technical knowledge and competitive shooting knowledge. So we love to ask questions and help people if they have any questions. As far as the Gunmakers Fair here, we've been tasked with doing the gates and the grounds. So we're in charge of the gate and policing up any garbages that need changed or any other janitorial duties such as that. So that's kind of what we got going on.
Well, I have to say, this place after 3 days is still really clean, and parking, everything's very organized, so you guys are doing a great service.
Yep, we got a good many of volunteers here working for us. Aside from us, with the NMLRA, the Jacobsburg Historical Society, and the Honorable Company of Horners, we've been able to put together a pretty good group of people to keep the Gunmakers Fair going.
Well, I'm glad. I mean, this show means a lot to me, so I thank you for your hard work.
Well, thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Back in January of 2021, I received a phone call from Jeff Cunningham, who is president of the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association, and he said, "Dave, is it true that Dixon's Gunmakers Fair is not coming back?" And I said, "Yes, Jeff, unfortunately, the pandemic did them in, plus the loss of parking across the street from the gun shop at Dixon's muzzleloading shop didn't allow for crowds." And it was, I think, a mutual agreement between Greg Dixon, son of Chuck Dixon, the owner, and Brenda, his wife, that it was probably time to move on. Well, now my dilemma was living back here in Pennsylvania and being asked to revive the Gunmakers Fair. It was like, okay, now what do I do? Where do I go? Who do I ask? And I thought on it for a night, and I thought, well, the number one thing is finding a spot to go. A lot of places are not gun-friendly these days. Even though we are making and using flintlock rifles, people still get nervous when you say gun. And so Gunmakers Fair, while it seems intriguing to all of us in the culture, to those who were not knowledgeable, it was questionable. So we had to find a friendly venue, and thank God we found Kempton Community Center, because they were very receptive. due to the fact that they're only 3 miles north from the gun shop on 737, and we were able to secure not only this building, but the grounds and all the smaller structures out there, including the seminar stage. So the next step was finding a coalition of the willing. In other words, finding some non-profits who were willing to put some skin in the game and also volunteers. Well, the first one was easy, the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association. The second one that I went to was Jacobsburg Historical Society, being a past president of that group. I had a lot of friends back there and volunteered with them over 20 years. So that was the next addition to the group. Then I called my good friend Jim Fulmer, who was past president and also a member of the Black Powder Hall of Fame from the NMLRA. And I said, Jim, I need administration. I said, you're the guy, can you do it? He said, no, I'm retired. And I said, well, I'm calling in a favor, Jim. He goes, will you go away? Well, Jim being Jim Fulmer, of course he accepted the position, and he's the director this year of what we have. The final group that I pulled in was the Honorable Company of Horners, who were highly esteemed craftsmen in scrimshaw, powder horns, leather bags, and related arts. So there you have it. You've got the NMLRA, the Pennsylvania Federation, Jacobsburg Historical Group, and finally the Honorable Company of Horners. With that coalition of 4 nonprofit groups, we got together, figured out a strategy for making this happen by raising money, by raffling off chances on a rifle, by looking for sponsors, by putting a lot of time on Zoom meetings as well as personal appearances here with the administration of the community center. We kind of rolled the dice. We weren't sure it was going to happen or work. But if you look around today and you see the crowds and see the parking lot where we don't have any spaces left, it's obvious that people came out of the pandemic just waiting for this place to happen, and it's happened.
Now we're good.
David asked me to speak on the accoutrement program here at the Gunmakers Fair at Kempton. What we have here is artisans, whether beginners or experts, enter their items, their horns, their bags, their what else? Knives, tomahawks, get entered in to be critiqued by our panel of experts up here who are masters at their work. What do I want to say? We're not judging against each other. Each item is judged on its own merit. Judging is probably the wrong word. They're critiqued, and you get a critique sheet back. You did this really well. Maybe you could do that better. Maybe if you stitched your bag this way or that way. The whole purpose is to bring the art forward, bring you to the point where one of these days you'll be up there as the expert critiquing someone else's work. So that's what we're doing here today. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
You're gonna ask some questions?
No, I was just, so you can give me a summary of the fair?
So this is the inaugural season, 2022, of the new Gunmakers Fair at Kempton, in Kempton, Pennsylvania. Up until about the past almost 40 years, we've been at the Dixon's Gunmakers Fair in Kempton, and the family decided that they wanted to cease having the show. So after about almost a 3-year hiatus, we decided to rejuvenate it with the firearms, the guns, and the accoutrements. So here we are, and so basically our score sheet has changed a little bit. Back in the old days, you used to have a lot of stuff was correct or incorrect or didn't fit the gun and stuff like that. We wanted to be a little bit more hands-on and more writing, so we kind of copied a little bit of what the accoutrement side did, which was a critique sheet that would be more personal when written. So we left a bunch of spaces. So when you come to the Gunmakers Fair and enter a firearm, we want you to try to be in that time period. So we have an apprentice, journeyman, and master category. And in all those three of those categories, you get a critique sheet like this. And some of the questions we ask are about your barrel. We look and see how your barrel's finished, make sure there's no foul marks, they were finished and completely done correctly. And then it gives us an area where you can either do excellent work, good work, fair work, or needs improvement, which is 0. So we try to reward you with better points for better work. It also gives us an area where we can write in there personal comments. And most of our comments are foul marks, not fitting the stock correctly, things like that. So usually the first 10 areas in this critique sheet are part of the confirmation or craftsmanship of the gun. And we have things like sights and nose cap and how they fit the wood, how things are done, side plates. And then once we get into the last part of the critique sheet, goes into the confirmation of the gun. And that is the transition areas of the gun and the finish on it. Fair enough. So once we tally up all the scores, the 3 judges, Carl Landis, Matt Harshberger, and myself, Mike Carcella, we sit down on Sunday, and that's kind of our day where we start to give out the awards for the ribbons. We pick the first, second, and third place winners by comparison in their class. And then once we have the sheets all done, then we start for a second place ribbon, or a third place ribbon, or a first place ribbon for each of those categories. Put my glasses on so I can see it. So we give out awards for engraving, incise and raised carving, craftsmanship, confirmation, and best of class, traditional or contemporary. We also give out a best of show if it warrants it. And this year we have a brand new award called the Rich Hoyza Award. Now Rich was one of the original founders of the Gunmakers Fair and a judge. He passed away a few years ago, and since we had COVID, we haven't had a chance to really honor him, so we come up with a new award called the Rich Hoyza Award. And that is for the best representation and recreation of a Pennsylvania long rifle. And we have a little display down there with some of his work and a couple of his guns that he owned when he was a collector. And we have a special blue, navy blue, and white ribbon strictly in honor for him. If we have a firearm on the table today that was entered over the weekend and we feel that it represents what Rich thinks or thought, or something he would like to have picked up and said, hey, I really like this, that will win that award. As a consensus of 3 judges, we haven't come up with that winner yet, or we may not even have a winner this year.
Would you
have to do it next year?
So would you say that's kind of the equivalent of the Madison Grant for the...
It's very close to Madison Grant. Madison Grant was pretty much the same way. One of the original judges on the accoutrement side was back with Rich, was Tom Ames, and he was a very close friend of Madison Grant. And Madison Grant was very similar to the way Rich was. He liked simplicity things that spoke to him when you held it in your hand or you looked at it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the way Rich was. He was super knowledgeable on everything about long rifles, and educating and helping people who came to this fair in the beginning for the first almost 40 years, and then the new generation, the new home here, that we're going to continue to try to keep going. And with the crowd that we had this week on Friday and Saturday, and the guns we had entered, we had almost 40 rifles entered this year. I think it's going to be a huge success again next year, because we're already talking about expanding.
Okay, great to hear.
Yep. So I know the facility, we've reserved this facility for 3 years. We can extend it. You know, it's just going to take a deposit, and we'll see what happens. But just from the crowds, I think there was close to 791 people on Friday, and over 1,000 or so more on Saturday, plus today. I know we're well over 2,000 attendees.
That's good.
To the show. We do have more vendors. We're going to have more vendors next year, and we're going to have a lot of more seminars and things like that for people to enjoy. There's plenty of things around the Gunmakers Fair of Kempton to go see. There's plenty of hotels in like Hamburg and Leonhardtville and Fogelsville and even in Allentown. A lot of bed and breakfasts up here in the hills. Good restaurants. There's plenty of things for stuff to do and ladies to go see if they're not into guns and they want to come along with their significant other. Make sure you can come along. But there's plenty of stuff here for kids to do. One of the major things about this facility that was a little bit different in Dixon's is it's an accessibility for people in wheelchairs and scooter carts and walking.
That is very true.
Everything's all on one level here, pretty much. They can walk through. A lot of the stuff in the old location was in tents. We're actually in full structures with lighting and hard floors, so we don't have to worry about weather and everything's secure. And if we do get some inclement weather, we can all hide inside here until it passes. And then the Kempton Community Center here has been so warming and welcoming to us by their volunteers. They're all volunteers. They have food available for us here and drinks and stuff like that. So we didn't have to bring in food vendors. We have a lot of room outside to expand. We have plenty of handicap parking. We have plenty of parking for the vehicles. We actually had, yesterday we had to go in the overflow parking. So next year I think we're probably going to reserve more space because they've allowed us to kind of, being it's our first year, kind of allowed us to go in and do kind of an a la carte thing. Like we want the midway, we want the 2 buildings, we want the concession stands, we want the bathrooms. Versus having to get a whole bunch of porta johns. It's much nicer to have actual inside flushable toilets versus, because a lot of women don't like those. This has really been a godsend for having this location. So we're glad to be here. We're glad to be keeping this tradition going along. And there's a lot of people that hopefully you get a chance to interview who really need to be thanked and stuff like that. It's, our major sponsors, which was the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association, the Jacobsburg Historical Society, the Honorable Company of Foreigners, PA Federation of Black Powder Shooters, which I'm a member of all of them.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that after 2.5 years, I get to see all my friends, which I live in the western part of the state, so it's about a 4.5-hour drive. But I know a lot of people make 2-day trips to get here, and they spend 3 days here, and they have a heck of a time. And that's what it's about.
I mean, and that's, for me, I started coming to Dixon's when I was 12. So there's people I've now known for like 15 years that I miss talking to them, catching up on my projects. So that's the one thing I love about this show.
I was in my teens when I came, and I'm 53 now, so
wow,
quite a long time. Yep. I was fortunate enough to enter rifles and powder horns and stuff like that for about 17 years. And then once I was asked to sit in with the old gun judges, the original guys, I sat in with them for about 4 or 5 years. And then they finally, as each one of them retired, they kind of said, all right, it's now your turn to come in. And I sat with the guys until almost everybody retired. Carl is one of the few from almost the original that's still here. Everybody else is still retired. So we went from about 6 judges, we're down to about 3. I'd really like to have like one more judge. I haven't found that right person yet. But with Matt and Carl and myself, I think we have it pretty much taken care of. We did 40 rifles. We were able to critique them all in about a day. And if we get more than that, we're going to need more judges.
Yeah.
I really hope to have more guns in the future. I hope to get back. When I was entering, we were having almost over 100 rifles.
Wow.
I'd really like to get back to that, in the 50s, 60s in the next 3 years. And I think we'll have it. I think we'll get it.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen the crowd today, over the past 3 days, has been a younger crowd.
Yeah.
And I really like that because these guys are the future and they're interested in it and they're coming out. And I see a lot of people carrying wood out. I see barrels and buying locks and stuff like that and parts. And I hope they go home in a year, build a rifle, bring it here for us to critique it and look it over and have a good weekend.
I personally think the new critique sheet should help a lot, because that's the one thing with a horn that I liked is I'll enter one that I knew it wasn't 100% perfect, but I know, okay, I can have it looked at by expert eyes.
Yep.
And I know, okay, I can sit down next year and work on it. And I really do like that new critique sheet. So.
Yep. One of the things we got a lot of grief from is, like, I'll be the first to admit, we don't know everything. we've been stumped on some things and stuff like that. And after we've critiqued the gun or something like that, we put a notation on there that we'd like to meet the person who made that gun, so we could find out, like, you know, what you were looking for and stuff like that. And was little things that we've seen on there. Was that something the original guys did? Because with the technology today, we bring a computer, we can kind of look up things and see different embellishment work that was put on a gun, but I don't know if it's 100% right. We see some mixtures of guns and stuff like that, so that's what's nice about the contemporary versus the traditional side.
Yeah.
We've actually changed guns, so we see something has like Berks County carving and engraving on it, but it doesn't has Lancaster style architecture or a patch box on it. Rather than hamper that person, as has been done in the past, we switch them over to contemporary.
Okay.
And that way they get more credit for it.
Yeah.
And then once our critique sheet's written and our personal notes are in there, they can go back and say, you know what, they were right on that. So the study of the process is most of the battle.
Yeah.
If you want to recreate something, you want to study the original makers and stuff like that to see how they did it. The original makers made mistakes also, but they also learned how to correct them. So you'll see some of their early work and their later work, and that's kind of how this is set up, with a first gun to apprentice, journeyman, and master. It's a learning process.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do it every year. Come to the Gunmakers Fair and enter stuff like they did at Dixon's, because it cost me. You know what I mean? Back in the day, you could probably build a rifle for $400 or $500, but you know that was a lot of money back then too. Today, you're probably close to $1,000 in parts and material. So to do that every year is not feasible for everybody, especially in an economy that's a little bit stressed right now.
I remember when I was younger, I was selling all my friends' knives, and I was like, maybe if I sell enough knives, I could come here and buy, you know, could buy the parts.
When we were down today and yesterday, I had a chance to go around and just talk with all the vendors throughout the 3 buildings. Asked them how they did, you know, how'd you do? And you know, everybody was up. Everybody said, hey, we sold things, we got orders and stuff like that, and it's been a success. So we try to get, you know, they come from a long way. They got to stay in a hotel for 3 days. They got to lug all this stuff here. They actually had to pay for a table, you know, and so to recoup their original cost and what it costs for them to come here and make money is a positive, and that's what, that's what we really want. Yeah. So what we'll do today now is we took all of these numbers from these critique sheets, we put them in the computer, excuse me, and we now have the total scores for each class. We're now, as the 3 judges, we're going to go find those guns. We're going to compare them on a table to each other and award the different first, second, and thirds. And that's pretty much what we'll do. We'll spend most of the morning on Saturday doing that. And as consensus, we pick out, you know, best of traditional, best of contemporary in each class, and then we figure we have a best of show, or do we have a Rich Royce award. And if we don't all 3 agree, we won't give that special award out. We'll have to save it for next year. So it gives an incentive for them builders this year to go back, read the critique sheet, if they choose to, and build that rifle better and come back more knowledgeable and then win a ribbon. You know what I mean? But that's our plan. You know what I mean? That's the continue of the education of building a long rifle. So.
Well, thank you very much. That's very great. And
it's the first time we ever got interviewed, which was nice. We had a couple more write-ups in the papers. It was pretty much, you know, a picture and we stood there, but it's nice to actually maybe convey some of our information out.
Thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe for more great content, and check out our Instagram page at @SquirrelTailShow.